You're standing in a checkout line. It's not a big purchase, nothing dramatic. Maybe it's a new pair of headphones you didn't plan to buy. Maybe it's clothes that looked better under store lighting. Maybe it's something you added to your cart at 11:47 p.m. because you deserved it. You tell yourself it's fine. You work hard. It's not that expensive. You'll cut back somewhere else. But on the way home or the next morning when the email receipt shows up, there's this tiny pinch in your chest. Not regret exactly, just a quiet question. Why did I really buy that? And if we're honest, that question isn't about the headphones. It's about something deeper. Because unnecessary purchases are rarely about the item. They're about emotion, about identity, about pressure, about trying to soothe something that has nothing to do with money. And most people never slow down long enough to notice that. So let's talk about it. Not from a place of guilt, not from a place of judgment, just from curiosity. Because when you understand why you buy what you don't need, something shifts, and the shift is surprisingly calm. First, I want to reframe something. Most financial advice talks about unnecessary spending like it's a discipline problem. Like you just need more willpower, more budgeting apps, more restriction. But here's the thing, you are not weak. You are human. Your brain is not wired to optimize long-term net worth. It's wired to seek safety, belonging, and relief. And in the modern world, purchasing has become the fastest shortcut to those feelings. Think about it. You feel stressed after work. You open a food delivery app. 30 minutes later, comfort arrives at your door. You feel behind in life. You buy something that signals progress. A watch, a course, a nicer phone. You feel bored on a Sunday. You scroll, you click. A package shows up in 2 days. It feels like something happened. The purchase becomes an emotional event. That's the part no one really talks about. When you buy something unnecessary, your brain lights up. Dopamine spikes, anticipation kicks in. Not because the item will change your life, but because your brain interprets the purchase as progress, novelty, or relief. It feels like movement, and movement feels like control. But here's the twist. The feeling you're chasing usually has nothing to do with the object. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who upgrades their car even though their current one works fine. On paper, it makes no financial sense. Higher payment, higher insurance, more stress. But emotionally, it might represent something else. Maybe it represents proof. Proof that they're not stuck. Proof that they've made it. Proof to their family that they're doing well. The car isn't transportation anymore. It's reassurance. Or think about the person who constantly buys productivity tools, new planners, new apps, new courses. They're not buying organization. They're buying hope. Hope that this time they'll finally feel in control. Hope that they won't feel behind. Hope that their life will feel less chaotic. The purchase becomes symbolic. And that's where unnecessary spending hides. Not in numbers. In narratives. We buy stories about ourselves. I'm successful. I'm improving. I'm not missing out. I'm taking care of myself. I'm not behind. The object is just a prop in that story. Now here's something even more interesting. Unnecessary purchases often show up when our identity feels shaky. When you're confident and clear about who you are, you don't need as many external signals. You're less reactive to trends, less sensitive to comparison. But when you feel uncertain, every advertisement feels personal. Every influencer's lifestyle feels like a measurement. Every sale feels urgent. And social media amplifies this in a way we've never experienced before. You're not just comparing yourself to your neighbors anymore. You're comparing yourself to curated highlight reels of thousands of people. People who seem to always be traveling, upgrading, celebrating. Your brain interprets that as a threat, not physical danger, social danger. If they're moving forward and I'm not, am I falling behind? And when the brain senses falling behind, it pushes you toward action. Buying feels like action. That's why sales work so well. Limited time offers create artificial urgency. Your brain hears if you don't act now, you lose. And humans hate loss more than they love gain. Behavioral economists have shown that we feel losses more intensely than equivalent gains. So even when you don't need something, the idea of losing the opportunity to have it feels painful. You're not irrational. You're predictable. There's another layer here that people rarely discuss: time anxiety. We live in a culture that constantly reminds us that time is passing. Birthdays, milestones, promotions, engagements, house purchases. When you see peers achieving visible milestones, there's this subtle clock ticking in your head. Am I on track? And sometimes, buying something becomes a way to simulate progress. You're not buying the house yet, but you buy furniture for when you do. You're not where you want to be financially, but you upgrade your lifestyle slightly to feel closer. It's almost like dressing for a role you haven't fully grown into yet. And again, that's not stupidity, that's psychology. Your brain craves alignment between who you are and who you want to be. Purchasing can feel like bridging that gap. But here's the quiet truth. If the purchase doesn't come with a genuine increase in income, skill, or stability, the feeling fades quickly. The brain adapts. This is called hedonic adaptation. You return to your baseline emotional state faster than you expect. The new phone becomes normal in a week. The new couch becomes furniture. The new subscription becomes another charge. And then the gap you are trying to close reappears. So what do? You buy again. It becomes a loop. Stress, purchase, relief, comparison, purchase, validation, boredom, purchase, stimulation. And because each individual purchase feels small, the pattern hides in plain sight. The real cost isn't the item, it's the accumulation. Let's say someone spends an extra $300 a month, things they didn't truly need. That's $3,600 a year. Invested modestly, even at average market returns over decades, that could compound into something meaningful. Not flashy millionaire numbers, but meaningful. More importantly, it could represent options. The option to leave a job that drains you. The option to take a break. The option to say no. And that's where the psychology flips. Because at the deepest level, unnecessary purchases are often about control. But real financial flexibility gives you actual control. The illusion feels immediate. The reality takes patience. So here's the turning point. Instead of asking, how do I stop spending? Ask something softer. What am I trying to feel right now? That question changes everything. If you're about to make a purchase, pause. Not to shame yourself, just to observe. Are you bored? Are you stressed? Are you comparing? Are you trying to reward yourself? Sometimes the purchase will still make sense. Life is meant to be enjoyed. Money is a tool, not a trophy. But sometimes you'll realize the object is standing in for something else. Maybe what you actually need is rest, or a conversation, or a walk, or clarity about your goals. And here's something interesting that happens when you practice this awareness. Your spending becomes more intentional without becoming restrictive. You start choosing purchases that genuinely improve your life instead of ones that just interrupt your mood. There's a difference between buying something that adds lasting value and buying something that temporarily distracts you. One builds stability. The other builds clutter. And I don't just mean physical clutter, mental clutter. Every unnecessary purchase carries a tiny cognitive weight, a reminder of money spent, a subscription renewal date, a payment obligation. When your expenses rise, your baseline stress rises too, even if you can technically afford it. This is something high earners discover the hard way. They make more money. They upgrade everything. Better apartment, better car, more subscriptions, more lifestyle commitments. On paper, they're successful, but their margin shrinks. And when margin shrinks, anxiety grows. It's not about income, it's about breathing room. Unnecessary purchases slowly erode breathing room. Now, I'm not saying you should live like a monk. That's not realistic, and it's not joyful. What I'm saying is that freedom feels better than accumulation. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you don't need to prove anything with your spending. When you stop trying to signal success and start building stability, something changes in your posture. You feel less reactive. You don't need every sale. You don't need every trend. You don't need every upgrade. You start to realize that contentment is not passive, it's strategic. Let me bring this down to something practical and grounded. Imagine you decide to create a simple buffer in your life, not a massive emergency fund overnight, just a small cushion. Maybe it's 1 month of expenses saved gradually. That cushion changes how purchases feel. When you have no buffer, spending feels tense, even small amounts. When you have some savings, spending feels chosen. The psychology shifts from scarcity to agency. And when you feel agency, you don't need as many emotional purchases. Because you're not trying to feel powerful through objects. You already feel steady. There's also something powerful about defining your own metrics. If you measure success by visible consumption, you will always feel behind someone. If you measure success by increasing flexibility, your progress becomes personal. More months of expenses saved, lower fixed costs, less dependency on each paycheck. Those things don't show up on social media, but they feel solid, and solidity is calming. Here's another small experiment you can try. Delay the purchase by 48 hours. Not forever, just 48 hours. If it still feels aligned after the emotional spike passes, it might be a genuine want. If it fades, you just saved yourself money without forcing discipline. You gave your nervous system time to settle. Often, unnecessary purchases live in urgency. Remove urgency, remove impulse. And over time, something subtle happens. You start trusting yourself more. Because you're not reacting to every emotional wave, you're observing it. That trust builds confidence, and confidence reduces the need for external validation. This is why the conversation around unnecessary purchases is really a conversation about self-awareness. Money amplifies psychology. It doesn't fix it. If you feel insecure, money can magnify that insecurity. If you feel grounded, money can magnify that groundedness. So instead of fighting your spending with force, approach it with curiosity. Notice patterns. Do you spend more when you're tired? Do you spend more after scrolling? Do you spend more after certain conversations? There's data in your behavior. Not to judge, to understand. And once you understand the emotional trigger, you can address the root instead of the symptom. If boredom triggers spending, build low-cost stimulation into your life. If stress triggers spending, build healthier relief habits. If comparison triggers spending, adjust what you consume digitally. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming aware. Because progress in money is rarely about massive heroic actions. It's about tiny, repeated decisions. Choosing margin over momentary excitement. Choosing calm over comparison. Choosing long-term ease over short-term ego. And here's what I want you to remember. You are not behind because you bought things you didn't need. Almost everyone has. The goal is not to erase your past purchases. The goal is to shift your future ones. You don't need to overhaul your life tonight. Just notice the next time you feel the urge to buy something unnecessary. Pause. Ask what you're actually seeking. If it's joy, maybe there's a simpler way. If it's rest, maybe sleep is the answer. If it's validation, maybe you're already enough without the object. And if you genuinely want the item and it fits within your financial reality, buy it without guilt. The difference is intention. Unnecessary purchases aren't about money alone. They're about emotion searching for relief. When you start giving the emotion what it truly needs, the spending naturally softens. And slowly, almost quietly, you'll look at your bank account and notice something different. More stability, less chaos, more breathing room. Not because you became extreme, but because you became aware. And awareness compounds in ways that feel far better than any delivery notification ever could. Progress beats perfection. Every time.